Most people don't recognize this, but your greatest transformation is rarely a quiet arrival. Right before it emerges, you will feel a profound sense of friction, a strange resistance, an exhaustion that defies logic. Ecologists might call this the disturbance phase before new growth. The same way a forest must be cleared by fire before a stronger ecosystem can rise from the ashes. What feels like a breakdown is actually proof that a breakthrough is imminent. If you are in that season, you are being fundamentally remade for what is to come. Have you ever felt a deep systemic fatigue settle in, even on days when you haven't done much? It's not the familiar tiredness from a long day or a sleepless night. It's different. It arrives when a significant internal shift is underway. One moment you feel poised for action, and the next, your energy vanishes for no discernible reason. This makes no logical sense, does it? Why would you feel most drained before the hard work begins, not after? This is the paradox of profound growth. Your internal systems don't just react to change, they anticipate it. Normal fatigue has a clear cause and effect. You worked late, you exercised hard, you took on too much. The drain is a direct result. But the exhaustion I'm talking about follows a different kind of law. It shows up right before a change you often cannot yet see. You will feel heavy, unfocused, perhaps even a sense of being stalled. It feels as if you have already expended a colossal effort, but in reality, the main event hasn't even started. It is as if the deepest parts of you know what is coming and have begun a massive reallocation of resources. That is why it feels so disorienting. The closest comparison is a great ship being brought into dry dock. To the outside world, the ship is inactive. It sits motionless, looking almost broken and abandoned. But what is really happening is a radical overhaul. Below the waterline, crews are hard at work, stripping away old barnacles, repairing the hull, installing new, more powerful engines. This process is immensely resource-intensive, yet it happens in a state of complete stillness. That pause is not a failure to sail. It is the prerequisite for the next, greater voyage. This is exactly what is happening to you. Science supports this in a tangible way. When your brain is forming new neural pathways, or your body is adopting a new state of being, energy is rerouted on a massive scale. It is a biological construction project. This explains the mental fog and the physical heaviness. It is not a sign that you are weaker. It is a sign that your system is undergoing a fundamental upgrade. The old programs cannot run at full capacity while the new operating system is being installed. Think of a mountaineer acclimatizing to high altitude. To survive at the summit, they must spend days at base camp, seemingly doing nothing. They often feel weak, lethargic, and unproductive. But during this inactive period, their body is performing a miracle. It is creating more red blood cells to carry oxygen more efficiently. The exhaustion and stillness are not a sign of failure to climb. They are the very mechanism of building the capacity to reach the peak. This is why you cannot interpret this fatigue as a regression. It is the opposite. You have entered the dry dock. The air may feel heavy. The silence may be deafening. But it is only because the upgrade is in process. The discomfort is not a random affliction. It is the notification that your system is preparing for a new reality. And right after this fatigue settles in, something even more unsettling often begins. Your world starts to dismantle itself on purpose. Why is it that the moment you commit to growth, life seems to strip away your familiar supports? It is profoundly confusing. Routines that once provided comfort suddenly feel hollow. Habits that carried you through yesterday now feel like a burden. The very structures you relied on begin to dissolve. Instead of feeling more stable, everything feels chaotic. And the immediate thought is always, I'm doing something wrong. I'm falling apart. But what if that collapse is not a failure? What if it is a necessary and intelligent clearing of the ground? You have likely experienced this. A morning ritual that once centered you now feels meaningless. A friendship that once supported you now feels draining. A career path that once defined you now feels like a cage. At first glance, this feels like losing your way. You panic because the familiar has become foreign. This is where most people get stuck, believing the collapse means they are moving backward. Here is another way to see it. Imagine a wild forest, thick with old, tangled undergrowth. For a new, healthier ecosystem to emerge, nature has its own reset button, a forest fire. The fire appears destructive. It burns away the dead wood, the overgrown shrubs, the very ground cover you were used to. But this clearing is essential. The fire returns vital nutrients to the soil and allows sunlight to finally reach the forest floor. It is only after this complete clearing that new, more resilient trees and a greater diversity of life can take root. Growth does not always look like addition. Often it begins with a radical subtraction. The system within you is clearing space. It is burning away the patterns, habits, and attachments that were useful for one stage of your life, but would suffocate the next. That is why everything feels so chaotic. It is not a punishment. It is a prescription. Just as a gardener must pull up the old plants to prepare the soil for a new season, your life is clearing what can no longer grow. That relationship that ended, that job that disappeared, they were not just losses. They were the clearing of the ground. The collapse itself pushes you to find a more fertile way of being. That is your system demonstrating its readiness for something new, not its weakness. Something else happens during this dismantling that is rarely discussed. your senses sharpen. What you first interpret as anxiety or restlessness is actually your intuition becoming clearer. With the noise of old routines gone, you can finally hear the subtler signals. This heightened sensitivity is your guidance system recalibrating, nudging you toward what aligns with the person you are becoming, not the person you have been. So, the next time a structure in your life begins to crumble, could you see it as a signal instead of a setback? The collapse, as unsettling as it is proof that the ground is being prepared for new construction. But right at the edge, before the new growth appears, there is usually one final twist. Have you ever noticed how life seems to present one last definitive challenge just as you are about to turn a corner? It feels almost cruel. The horizon is in sight, and suddenly a final intense trial emerges. That trial is not random. It is the test before the transformation. The final confirmation before you embody your next stage. Growth does not happen simply because you desire it. It must be solidified through practice. The new strengths you have been building in the quiet all get tested in a single, culminating moment. It is the final exam you did not know you were studying for. And if you have ever mistaken this moment for a final roadblock, you are not alone. People see this phase and believe the universe is blocking them. But perhaps it is not a block at all. Perhaps it is the very thing that will grant you wings. Think of a butterfly emerging from its chrysalis. The butterfly is fully formed, but it is encased. The way forward is obvious, but it is not simply given. It must break free. This final struggle is not an obstacle to its new life. It is an essential part of it. The effort of pushing through the chrysalis is what forces fluid into the butterfly's wings, giving them the strength and structure they need to fly. If the chrysalis were to magically disappear, the butterfly would emerge with weak, wet wings and would never be able to soar. It would perish on the ground. The final test is not there to stop it. It is there to make it. That is all this final test truly is. Sometimes that test looks like your patience being pushed to its absolute limit. Other times, it is a test of your integrity, a choice to remain true to yourself when a compromise would be easier. And sometimes the test is courage, a situation that demands you act from your new strength, not your old fear. These are not arbitrary trials. They are confirming that you have truly integrated the lesson, not just intellectually understood it. When you pass that test, even imperfectly, you prove to yourself that you are no longer the person who entered the chrysalis. That proof is not theoretical. It is embodied strength, demonstrated under pressure. And that is what unlocks your new reality. Picture this. Someone has been quietly working on their self-worth, not through grand affirmations, but through small, consistent actions. Setting a boundary here, honoring a need there. For weeks, it feels invisible. Then one day, a situation arises that demands they stand fully in that self-worth, a test that in the past they would have failed. That test activates all of those hidden efforts. That is the moment they realize they no longer shrink under pressure. Passing the test did not just let them through a gate. It revealed the wings they had been building all along. And here is what happens next. Once that struggle is complete, there is a release, a sense of lightness. Opportunities begin to flow. Connections form effortlessly. What was once a grinding uphill climb becomes a graceful flight. But remember, that flight was earned in the final, difficult push. So, if it feels like everything is testing you right now, do not assume you are being held back. What feels like an impossible barrier may be the very thing designed to give you the strength to fly. That final struggle is proof that your wings are almost ready. The pressure you feel is not a force holding you down. It is a sign that your next stage is ready to begin. The exhaustion, the collapse, the final frustrating test, they are not mistakes. They are the clear sequential signals of a profound transformation already in motion. So instead of doubting the process, remind yourself that what feels heavy today is your future self being born. You are not falling apart. You are shedding a skin. If you recognize this process in your own life, write the phrase, "My upgrade is in progress," in the comments. Let it be a simple declaration that you trust the work being done in the quiet. You have outgrown your old form, and the new one has already begun to emerge.